Now the next thing we'll do is if there are no cards in the review page, let's disable these buttons. So it doesn't make sense that we can press them if there is nothing in the page. So first of all, to disable these buttons, we'll go into each button and create a way to disable it. So let's go into the language button. We'll create another variable. We'll name this isDisabled. This will be a parameter, and we'll set the default value as false. We'll then set a condition with the onPressed. If isDisabled is true, return null, otherwise return the callback. So we'll do the same thing with the header button. Okay, so now we have a way to disable these two buttons and just add equals false. So now we want to be able to notify the flashcards page when we should disable the buttons. We'll do that by using the language buttons notifier. We'll create another bool. We'll name this buttons are disabled. Set this to false. We'll then create a method, disable buttons, and we'll set buttons are disabled to what we pass in and call notify listeners. So we can now use this variable to determine whether the button should be disabled or not. And now the change notifier covers all of the buttons in the review page. So let's update this name so it's a bit more relevant. Refactor, rename. We'll just name this review notifier. And we'll also update the file name. So what we can do is in the home page, before we navigate to the review page, let's already update whether the button should be disabled or not. So let's go to the home page. And here is the method that runs when we navigate to the review page. So here we want to check the database to see if the table has any words inserted. So what we can do is use Database Manager. So select all of the words. We can then use the then callback. So again, just another way to access the result from the future. Now we need to call the method we just created in review notifier. So we use provider to do that. Review notifier. Set listen to false. So we'll store the provider in a variable first. So now we can write if words, and we can check is empty, i.e. we've got nothing in the table. We'll then call the method disable buttons, and we'll pass in true. Else, we'll pass in false. After we've done that, we want to then navigate to the review page. So we need to cut this out and paste it inside the callback. So now before we navigate to the review page, we'll run this code here. We'll check if these words in the database will update the notifier. And because this is quite lengthy now, let's just refactor this into its own method. We'll name this load review page. So therefore we can just keep things a little bit more easier to read by having a private method down the bottom here. Now let's go back to the review page. If we remove a word, we should also check if we have removed all of the words. So here we can write if, and we can use the review words variable is empty. So call this method again, disable buttons, and we'll pass in true. And if we have cleared all of the words here, we definitely know the button should be disabled. So we'll copy this and paste this in here. Okay, and now the last step is we want the buttons to actually update based on the notifier. So we have two sets of buttons. We have the header buttons, the three at the top, and then these four language buttons at the bottom. Now to listen to the review notifier, we only care about one variable. So therefore, I'm going to wrap the row in a selector. So this means we can just select one variable to listen to. In the angle brackets, we'll first write the provider we want to select from, and the second type will be the variable we want to select. So in this case, a bool. We then need to select the variable. Buttons are disabled. So now we'll only listen to this variable, and we're putting the selector on the row. So therefore, we'll only rebuild this part of the widget tree. We need to update the child to a builder. We'll create the variable, disable. So now we can pass this in. So for the header button, is disabled, and we'll pass in disable. So we've got 3 buttons. Okay, great. And we'll do the same thing for the bottom 4 buttons. So we'll just copy this code here. And again, we'll wrap this row. So we'll only rebuild these 4 children. Paste this in. Okay. And now we need to pass in is disabled, pass in the variable. So do the same for all of these 4 buttons. Okay, now let's do a hot restart and test this out. Let's clear all of the cards. And awesome, those buttons are disabled. Let's jump out, jump back in, and the buttons remain disabled. Let's populate with a card. Those buttons are not disabled. Let's remove a card. And awesome, those buttons become disabled. So this is looking really good. And lastly, if we go into the settings page, we have a button reset. So also in this scenario, we should delete the whole database. So let's go to the settings page. We have the refresh button on the settings tile. In here, we can write database manager and import the library. And now let's just remove the database. So in this situation, let's just delete the file. So if there is an issue with the file or anything like that, we can just reset it, delete it, and then create a new database file. And I'll add the async and await keywords. Okay, great. So let's do one final test. We'll do a hot restart. Let's populate the database, put in some bird words, save incorrect cards. The button is disabled. Pop into the review page. We can remove a word. Let's exit the review page. Reset. Jump back in. And awesome, the review page is empty. So we've deleted the database file and these buttons are disabled.